Hey guys, Helen Hartsmith here again from the Heart of the Witch's Path YouTube channel. I hope you're having a good day. Welcome fall. Fall is in the air, and this is the time of year when a young witch's mind turns to thoughts of pumpkin spice flavored and scented things and layering clothes and maybe wearing knee-high boots. It's autumn, it's fall, and yay. Um, Today I'm making a video for answering a question, or I hope I'm going to be answering a question. Cassie Johnson is a viewer, and she was asking about what kind of content, in my opinion, a newbie should have in their Book of Shadows. And so I took a minute, took some deep breaths, put myself 20 years into the past, and thought about, my experiences and the different books of shadows that I've had in my lifetime, and, tried to think about, what was beneficial to me then, and what have I found that's beneficial to kind of put into a Book of Shadows now. So this is my opinion, and you may or may not agree with it, and that's okay. Let me know what kind of comments you have. Before I kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this, I did do a video, and I'll put a link in the description box below. I've actually done a couple of blog posts too. The blog posts kind of talk about how I arrived at the current system that I have for my Book of Shadow. I actually call it a Book of Light because I look at the information that I keep in there as a light that illuminates my knowledge. So I call it a Book of Light, or a BOL. I'll link the blog posts below that are talking about like how, because I've had different versions, but talking about how I got to where I'm at right now. And I also did a video where I went through kind of page for page what my current Book of Light looks like. And I've added a little bit of content maybe since then, but I haven't had a whole lot of chance to add a whole lot more. Although my coven has planned a day where we'll sit down and basically scrapbook things together and stuff like that. So if you're interested in me doing like another video once I have more content in that book, then I'd be happy to do so. Just kind of let me know. So anyhow, let's talk about what kind of content is good for a newbie. The first thing that I would say that you want to ask yourself is, what kind of a witch do you want to be? Like, what kind of a witch are you called to be? Are you called to be someone who's like a kitchen witch, who maybe wants to put recipes and intent in their Book of Shadows? For me personally, I knew that I wanted to be very much kind of on that clergy end of things. I can perform weddings and funerals and things of that nature. And so I've, thought about and put together things from a ministerial standpoint. So think about, what kind of a witch are you called to be? Because I think that's going to shape how your Book of Light or your Book of Shadows is going to be laid out. And what I did, I always had a Book of Shadows or a Book of Light where I tried to group information together. So I always kind of tried to think about, how did I want my information organized? And so my most recent Book of Light, I actually have sections. And so I thought I'll share with you the sections that I have to just give you some food for thought. Okay, so I have a reference section. And so that has tons of things like I had the hardest time in the beginning knowing what signs went with which element. And so a reference section has a lot of pictures or diagrams or things like that. And I'll talk more about that content as we, move further along. I also have another section that's all about the Sabbats and the moon, like the phases and magic and things like that. I have a section on correspondences, so lists of herbs to use for what purpose, and stones and things like that. And I've actually kind of, my lists of correspondence has gotten bigger than what will fit in my book of light. And so I'm still trying to figure out how I want to handle it. For the moment, the correspondences have come out into their own separate book. And I think I've talked about that before. But if you want me to go through that content, then let me know. But I still want to have some correspondences in my book of light. So whether it's like an abbreviated list that is only like the most popular rocks, I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure that out. I also have a section on spell work. So the spells that I have personally done, whether they be ones that I copied out of a book or ones that I came up with on my own, there's a section for that. I also have a section on quotes. I'm a really big person on if I'm reading someone's book and I come across a paragraph or a sentence or something like that that is like, whoa, then I will copy that quotation into my book of light. So I have a section for that. As I talked about, I really knew that I wanted to have like a ministerial approach to my information. So I have a ministerial section. And then finally, you might want to look at a section that has rituals and prayers in it. Not only rituals like for Sabbath, but also rituals like things like gaining more psychic ability. I have one in my book of light that's for, it's a prayer for a person who died suddenly or tragically. And so different prayers like that just kind of puts them in an organized way. So those are my sections in my current book of light. And if you follow me on Instagram, I feel like now is a pretty good time. I'm trying for like the first time ever. I'm doing a couple of challenges on Instagram. So we'll see how well this works out. But on Instagram, which is at Heart of the Witch's Path, I posted a picture of my 2 book of lights because I maintain 2. I maintain a physical copy, which is in a book. And then I also maintain a digital copy that I can put on my tablet or computer. So that's definitely something to think about, is your format, whether you want a hard copy or are you okay with just a digital, or do you want both? So now let's talk about content. I think that it's important. There's not a lot of rules when it comes to witchcraft. We have the charge of the goddess, and we have the Wiccan Rede, and we have the charge of the god too. And I think it's important to have those in your Book of Shadows, because it's something that's there that you can go back to and reference. And they're it's kind of like the spine of witchcraft, I think. And they don't take up a lot of space. So why not include them in your Book of Light, Book of Shadows? I think it's really important to have a section for your spell work. And I think you can also use that as a place to kind of chronicle and log the success of your spell work. So I know that, I meant to grab the book before and completely forgot about it. But in Christopher Penczak's book, The Outer Temple of Witchcraft, which is his text for his second year of the mystery school, there is it's like a form that you can fill out for spell work. At least I think that's where it's at. But I mean, you might even be able to do a search online to have some kind of a form. So have a section for what your ingredients were and how much. If you use words of power, or hand gestures, or body movement, have, a section for that. And then also have a section for how, 2 months later, what are you seeing coming from that spell work? 6 months later, a month later, a place to kind of basically log how successful the spell was or wasn't. So if you do the same spell twice and do it with different, do it on a different day or a different time of day, do you get different results? So that kind of helps you as you gain experience with magic and with your craft. You've got the information that's all there in one place. So I think that's important. I kind of put this as references for tradition. This is kind of how I classified it. Because I've gone through the Temple of Witchcraft teachings, there are various things and various illustrations that I thought were important for me to have a quick reference guide to. So things like the 3 selves. In temple teachings, you learn that Christopher sees you as having 3 selves. And so there's different notes that I've added to drawings that I've photocopied out of the books to put in my Book of Light. So the 3 selves, the 3 pillars, the tree of life, if you study the Kabbalah, different things like that you can put into your Book of Light. And these are things that you can add notes to and make changes to as you progress down your path. I think that divination info is important and something to look at. If you're working with tarot or runes or Ogham, you can make some quick reference guides maybe for yourself. Or there's lots of things on Pinterest and Google and things like that you can print out and actually add into as you gain experience in those forms of divination. I also used 4-penny divination for a year, and so I put in my Book of Light what the different roles were. So that I thought was kind of important. I think that many witchcraft traditions talk about, if they don't fully use the chakras as part of their belief system. And so you might want to include some chakra information. There's lots of different depictions that you can find online that will tell you the colors and stones that are associated, what body systems and things like that, so that you can have a quick reference guide in your Book of Light. I also included the Hermetic principles in mine, and there's additional laws of magic that I included in mine just so that I could reference them. There's like the 8-fold, what is it called? The 8-fold something of consciousness. It's the 8 different ways that you can use to shift your consciousness for like meditational journeys and things like that. I also have, like I said, I have an entire section on Sabbat information. So that has information like correspondences, what deities work with each of the Sabbats, which stones correspond to them, colors, what foods. So if you're planning a feast, you can, reference things like that. For instance, Imbolc is really like the dairy and potato centered Sabbat for feasting. So I have that kind of information. I also have recipes for incense for each of the Sabbats that are in my Book of Light, and including in the word escapes me, but it's like an incantation to kind of ignite the incense as you make it. So that was important for me. I also have a story for the Wheel of the Year. My coven, Mystics of Real Lure, belongs to kind of like a parent entity that's called Keepers of the Hearth. And so through their teachings, they had a beautiful Wheel of the Year story for the goddess and god that are separate, but it shares what they're experiencing as they travel through the Wheel of the Year. And so I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to be able to reference that quickly. So I took it from the lessons and added it into my Book of Light for that. Let's see. Of course, you might want to include your rituals in your book of light, or you might want to have a separate book that has all of your Sabbath rituals and your full moon rituals, whatever works best for you. I also have the section on moon information. So I have stuff like what are the names for each of the full moons throughout the year. I also have different magics that work best at certain times of the month. So different phases of the moon, different goddesses that correspond with that phase of the moon and things like that. And then of course you can add your rituals there too. Let's see. I'm trying to not be super wordy about this. You also might want to include information on your guides. So if you work with animal guides, plant guides, stone guides, who are you working with, and what do they generally want to work with folks as? If that makes sense. For instance, I work with Blue Jay, and Blue Jay is really good for helping you with your communication issues and blockages. And so that kind of information I have in my Book of Light. Any other rituals and prayers? Like I talked about, I've got a prayer for someone who passed suddenly, and things like that. So you might want to have a section and include things like that you come across. If you use Loricas, some people pronounce it different ways, but those are kind of like devotional prayers. You might want to include those. So if you're working with a particular deity and write your own or come across a prayer, you might want to add that so that you've got it, so you know where it's at in a hard copy kind of thing. And I also have a copy of the Consecration of Tools ritual. I've had my tools pretty much for a number of years, but I have that consecration, and it's actually a consecration ritual that I found in Scott Cunningham's book for this Guide for a Solitary Practitioner. I think what I did was just photocopied right out of the book and then added it into my my Book of Light. So yeah, those are kind of my suggestions on some things that you want to look at. And the biggest guideline for you, and the biggest guideline that I've had for myself throughout this process, because like I said, my current Book of Light is not my only one. And so I've thought about, how do things work best for me? What information do I feel that I need to reference? Because, if you don't want to work with runes, or just feel like you're never going to work with runes, then why put it in your Book of Shadows? If you don't intend to do moon rituals, then why include moon information? Things like that. So, you've really got to look at, like I said, what kind of a witch do you want to be? Because different traditions might require different kinds of information. You might find that you might have information that's really important to you now, in wherever you're at on your path. But say you decide to do a new version, and maybe there's some information that you found yourself not referencing or not using, so you might not want to include it. I try to stress adaptability for a Book of Light. And so that's why digital copies work really well, or a physical copy that you can move things around in. So maybe a 3-ring binder is your best bet. Or, something along those lines where you can take things in and out and move things around as you feel like you need to do. Okay. So I hope this video has been helpful. Cassie, I hope I answered your question well enough. And again, remember, these are just my opinions. And so take them as with that information that it's my opinion. If you enjoyed this video or learned something from it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel. We're trying to do some fun stuff. Kathy and I are trying to nail down a day where we can get together and film some more top 10s. So I'm looking forward to that. And we've got some other fun videos, DIY type stuff that we want to try. So look for that in the future. And that is going to be it for this video. Give me some comments as to what do you think needs to be in a newbie Book of Shadows. What did you put in your Book of Shadows as a newbie that I didn't talk about? And then, of course, you can email me at heartofthewitchespath@yahoo.com. Check out the Instagram. It's super fun. Check out the Facebook page too. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and thanks for walking the path for a little while with me. Until next time, blessed be.